Have you ever felt trapped in a relationship loop where you desperately crave closeness, but the moment someone gets close, you feel an overwhelming urge to run away? Or maybe you push people away only to panic the second they actually leave. If your relationships feel like a constant tug of war between a desperate fear of abandonment and an equally intense fear of intimacy, you might be experiencing what psychologists refer to as disorganized attachment. Today, we're breaking down exactly what disorganized attachment is, where it comes from, and most importantly, the concrete steps that you can take to heal it. Disorganized attachment isn't a permanent flaw in your personality, it's a coping mechanism. It's what happens when your brain learns to view the people who are supposed to love you as both a source of safety and a source of fear. Before we get further into it, it's important to understand that disorganized attachment is essentially a combination of two other attachment styles, anxious and avoidant. We've done deep dives into both of these previously, so if you want a thorough breakdown of how they operate individually, definitely check out our videos on both anxious and avoidant attachment styles. Both are linked in the description below. But today we're looking at what happens when these two styles collide. To understand the chaos of a disorganized style, we first need to look at its two halves. Let's start with anxious attachment. At its core, this style struggles to operate and feel secure on its own. If you have an anxious attachment style, you might feel a constant underlying anxiety, fear, or panic that your support system is about to vanish. This results in a frantic need for reassurance, which often drives people to connect with unhealthy partners, drastically lowering their expectations of others just to keep someone around. Now, on the other hand, this intense fear of abandonment can lead to behaviors that overwhelm healthy partners, such as frantic outreach, constant texting, or a hypervigilance to any sign of rejection. On the exact opposite end of that spectrum, we have avoidant attachment. Now, this is characterized by a fundamental refusal of support, even from people who genuinely care. If this is your default, you detach from others by actively rejecting or undermining the support that they offer. You might think, I can take care of myself, I don't need anyone to lean on. And you use that logic to refuse to be open, vulnerable, or emotionally available in your relationships. Now, imagine carrying both of those mindsets at the same time. That is the reality of disorganized attachment. We can look at how this contradiction plays out on a daily basis. You might actively seek out support when you don't necessarily need it, such as by requesting advice or validation for minor everyday decisions. If that support isn't instantly available, the anxious side takes over. You might fire off walls of text or lash out at the other person for their perceived abandonment. But then the pendulum swings. Feeling ashamed or anxious or terrified even by your own vulnerability, your avoidance side kicks in. You suddenly become distant. You isolate yourself because you fear being let down and hurt again by the people you count on. Yet this isolation isn't peaceful. It's fraught with intense anxiety and stress. You sit alone, stewing in fear until the panic of being alone becomes too much to bear. So what do? You frantically reach out, starting the entire painful cycle all over again. Now, if you recognize yourself in this cycle, please know this. You're not crazy, you're not broken. You've just developed these patterns, sometimes subtly, over time to protect yourself. Usually, disorganized attachment is born from a painful combination of two things: neglect from some of the people closest to you, and aggression or abuse from others. Think about the math of that environment. The neglect teaches you that you are fundamentally on your own, forcing you into isolation. Meanwhile, the aggression teaches you that human connection is dangerous and painful, your brain gets caught into this impossible double bind. I need people to survive, but people also hurt me. Now, while this frequently starts in childhood with parents or caregivers who are unpredictable, frightening, or emotionally absent, childhood isn't the only source of these patterns. It's not the only place they can develop. You could have had a perfectly stable childhood, but a subsequent series of toxic, abusive, or highly unstable relationships throughout adulthood could have warped your attachment style, training your nervous system to adopt a disorganized pattern. And the result is a deeply skewed view of what relationships are and a set of subconscious beliefs that make both connection and isolation feel equally terrifying. So, how do we break the loop? Healing disorganized attachment is about teaching your nervous system that stability is safe. It requires a deliberate, intentional approach with some pretty general steps. First, setting boundaries in existing relationships. And we start by identifying our core needs and developing a healthy set of expectations for the people already in our lives. This might mean two things. On the one hand, we might need to create some distance from highly toxic or unstable supports. On the other hand, with our healthy relationships, it means adjusting how we lean on them. Instead of treating a friend like an emotional rescue boat when you feel anxious, practice managing minor waves yourself before reaching out. Step two is committing to non-isolation. The reality is that no matter how hard we try, we can only cope with so much stress on our own. Now, in the process of addressing our current relationships, we might start to feel kind of hopeless or frustrated that we don't have as many healthy supports as we need. Or on the flip side of that, we're trying to be a little bit more self-reliant, a little bit more independent when it comes to leaning on those healthy supports that exist. But this can be a confusing process. And when the avoidant urge kicks in and tells you to crawl into a cave and cut everyone off, don't. Make a firm commitment to stop isolating. As you distance yourself from those unhealthy people, make sure you're actively looking for and cultivating new stable sources of support. It will feel uncomfortable, but connection is the only place attachment injuries can heal. And as you develop your own independent source of coping mechanisms, make sure that you don't lean too far away from the healthy supports. Sometimes we forget to connect when we need to. The third step, maintain concrete boundaries in new relationships. Now, as you build new connections, protect your progress by setting specific, strict goals and limits. Be assertive in advocating for your needs early on. If someone crosses a line, hold them accountable to the expectations that you've set. You don't have to tolerate poor treatment just to keep the peace. Now, through this entire process, your anxiety will spike. That's normal. Your brain will scream that you are in danger because you are actively changing the rules of survival. Healing requires a commitment to using consistent coping mechanisms such as journaling, somatic grounding techniques, or engaging a therapist in order to manage that anxiety while you practice functioning independently and engaging supports in healthy, effective ways. If you want to take some steps towards breaking the cycle today, here's a little homework. Grab a piece of paper and a pencil or a pen and consider your past relationships and the insight that you've gained into them. Write down a clear list of your actual needs and expectations of others. And also next to that, write down some of the maladaptive assumptions that you automatically make about relationships. We have to actively challenge our all or nothing thinking. So do you find yourself believing things like people are inherently untrustworthy? Everyone who is nice to me is just out to get something from me, or I am fundamentally incapable of managing life on my own? Recognize these thoughts for what they are: defense mechanisms, fueled by past neglect or abuse. This may seem like a simple exercise, but the thoughts, feelings, and memories that you may unearth in the process can become overwhelming. Processing this underlying trauma is heavy lifting, and it can be incredibly difficult to do on our own, especially if you currently lack effective, healthy coping mechanisms, or more importantly, a strong support network. So be gentle with yourself and really do consider exploring these assumptions and this whole process with a therapist. Moving from a disorganized attachment style to a secure one doesn't happen overnight. It's a journey of teaching yourself one small boundary at a time that it is safe to love and to be loved without losing yourself. Now, if this video resonated with you, give it a thumbs up, share it with someone who might need to hear it as well, and don't forget to subscribe for more deep dives into psychology and personal growth. Let me know in the comments, which side of the pendulum do you find yourself swinging to the most often? And check out our other videos about avoidant and anxious attachment for a more in-depth review of each. Thank you for watching. I'm Chris Nackos, and I'll see you next time here on the Seaglass Perspective.